success. And we were learning a bit about your journey because it sounds like she has gotten on her feet and she's moving along just fine, right, towards her dream. So how did you get here? So you, obviously I've got some notes behind me here.
Yeah.
Tell us how this little girl from San Lorenzo,
Yep.
which is it
You got it,
Lorenzo?
Lorenzo. Yeah.
It's Leandro and Lorenzo. I get them mixed up, but so San Lorenzo on the border of Oakland. How did you get from that little neighborhood over to the other side and get this program rolling?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for asking. Yes, I grew up in the East Bay. I became a young mom at the age of 20, 21, pregnant at 20, had my first child at 21, and I ended up relocating to San Bruno. And just from there, I took jobs along the peninsula and I never left. And so the peninsula has been my home from San Bruno to Belmont and to now Mountain View. So it's just been a journey of connecting with the community along the peninsula, loving my roots and where I came from in the community, but really just getting invested and involved in my community. As a mom of four, I really wanted to teach my children the value of serving and giving back right where they lived. And so that set me on a journey to connect with this nonprofit that was called Reach Potential Movement back in 2009. I had the opportunity to bring my four little kiddos along. And a lot of nonprofits, you really don't have the opportunity to bring your children along. And my youngest was in a stroller. So I was like, hey, this is really cool. I can volunteer at a public school, had my littlest one in a stroller. One thing leads to another, volunteering, taking on ownership and projects, join the board, take a position. And then in 2017, I had the opportunity to take on the leadership role as executive director. Yeah.
Okay, so you got kids into school. You started observing. You told me the story about in the school system, there was parent participation.
Yes.
But many of the parents have 2, 3 jobs and working around the clock. So the school had an exception where they could allow you to cook food and bring it in as part of that participation.
Yes.
And then you also saw the community whenever there was a tragic issue or a big event, they went to task to create the food for helping to raise funds to celebrate the event itself. And I think that was kind of the idea where you saw the connection between the food and the moms that had a big hearts and just not enough time, and the fact they were kind of trapped where they were and needed a way out. So tell us a little bit about that school observation season where you saw all that. That was amazing to me.
Yeah, I think so. The program that my children in was called CEL, so Community Enhanced Learning. And it was in a public school, but it was a set apart program in the public school. And so legally, the public school couldn't charge you a fee to participate, but there was a buy-in, right? They wanted a buy-in where you just kind of pay for everything all at the beginning of the school year, field trips, contributions to classroom supplies. It costs over roughly to send a child to school, back to school with a mindset ready to learn and the materials that they need, over $1,400 per student, right? So my children are, 29 down to 15. So of course that's gone up over time, or, that's the higher amount closer to now. But so with this program though, the idea was that everybody contributed. We're all part of the community. We're all stakeholders. And but it was impossible for a lot of them to pay a fee. It was impossible for a lot of them to volunteer and earn credits against those fees. And so one of the things that they could do was bring food. And so whether that was for a harvest festival or some international day, there were ways that they would show up just strongly. I mean, hey, I love food from all over the world, and I bet you guys do too. I don't think I'm alone in this. Something happens over food, something powerful happens over food. There's community, there's connection, conversation. I mean, dreams are formed over food. Family time and connection is formed around food. And so this was just a way we saw people showing up. And so just an observation. And it's also heartbreaking, right? When you want to contribute as a parent and, historically working with the Latino community, what I can tell you, and I know there's some others in the room that are working in youth development, serving kids that are full of potential. what I can tell you is I've never met a parent that does not want to see their child succeed, but what they lack is opportunity, right? They have this heart to see their child do better than them. As a parent, of course, I want my children to do better than me. That's what we want. We want to see them succeed, but we lack often those that don't have an educational background or come from poverty, they lack opportunity, right?
You also saw when the community rallied behind tragic situations with food. And I think, how did that lead into the concept of mompreneurs? I mean, what is the connection between that observation, your willingness to get involved, and then this incredible idea of mompreneurs?
Yeah, great question. So historically, the Latino community does what's called a kermesse, and that's a way to basically a bunch of people from the community get together, they make food and sell food in a park. And they're just doing it like neighbor to neighbor, just like if you know somebody that makes sourdough bread, has starter kits or jams, you can sell person to person and neighbor to neighbor. You just can't publicly advertise those sales without getting into trouble. So this has long been going on. Somebody's selling tamales, choco flan, empanadas, pupusas, you name it. But the community gets together to help each other. Maybe they need to send money back to bury a family member. Maybe they've found somebody in their household has cancer. Maybe somebody can't pay the rent because they've lost a job. So the community has rallied together to create these food sales to give back to the person and household in need. So we what kind of launched us in this journey, again, long history of selling food, using food for fundraisers, even for Reaches programs. But last year, a couple years ago, a need came up. So Reach is very heavily involved in serving the unhoused community, but in a niche with RV and vehicle dwellers. So households and individuals that reside in RVs because they can't afford the atrocious rents in Mountain View. In Mountain View, the average rent is 102% more than the national average. And high rental prices are directly related to homelessness. And so we had a mompreneur, she wasn't technically a mompreneur at that time, but we had a mom in the community that had two small children. And she was in a legal battle with the children's father because she was living in an RV that had no running water. And so she was going to have CPS intervention if she could not upgrade her living standards. And so we were able to rally around her. A bunch of people in the community came together. We were able to help purchase food and let her have skin in the game, let her do the work. We came alongside her as the expert, and she was able to raise enough money to buy a new RV that had running water, it had showers and toilets. So that was kind of how we're like, hey, we're onto something here. We need to take this and multiply it.
So that's where the whole idea of mompreneurs was formally launched, and you created this whole program around there where the program wasn't just a drop-in program. There was like true commitment. You want to be in a program, you have to participate. Tell us about the program and the structure you put around it so that you could have sustainability of the participants and get some programming started. So tell us how it got started.
We're in Silicon Valley, right? Our time is at a premium. That's just a fact, right? We're all busy. And it's difficult to volunteer. It's difficult to invest time. And a lot of good things going on between our families, the work that we do, the ways we want to give back in the community, faith communities, if you add that in there, right? Time is at a premium. And so we, recognize the work within Reach has always been about looking at removing barriers to access, right? It's a small nonprofit, it's nimble and it's quick. There's not a lot of bureaucracy. We see a need, we can jump in and run toward the need. And so there are needs. And so I want to talk about a few of those and then a little bit more about the formalization. So when we're talking about moms, as Cindy said, it's mompreneurs, it's women moms that are entrepreneurs. And we don't actually exclude women that don't have children because we believe that women are like moms anyway, whether it's their niece, the next door neighbor, they function in a maternal capacity. So we don't exclude any women from the program that feel a calling to participate. So they join with us. But so in that, what are some of those barriers though of being a mom in Silicon Valley? If your language isn't English, you might not have a tax ID. So I just want to put out a plug that just because, so we're serving primarily the immigrant community, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily undocumented, right? But with that, there are barriers, right? What if you don't drive a vehicle? What if in our county right now, there's no VTA, there's no bus line right now or train, there's a strike going on, right? So if you rely on public transportation to get from point A to B, you're in a quandary, right? So, this is a community that's just burdened with transportation, burdened with working 2 and 3 jobs and have to get kids to school, right? You don't get kids to school, then what? Then they're truant. What? Then that's a legal issue, right? So there's all these different barriers. And so Mountain View, we primarily serve in North Santa Clara County. Most of the funds and resources go to San Jose, South County, right? Because where there's the larger population. I'm going to throw out a stat I think that's going to blow your mind. I've been working on a project right now, and it talks about homelessness in Santa Clara County. San Jose is 181 square miles, Mountain View's 12 square miles. If you count the homeless population per the PIT, what's published, there are more people per square mile homeless in Mountain View than there are in San Jose, right? Who would have thought, right? But if you do the math, do the calculations, there are more people unhoused in Mountain View per square mile than San Jose. Most of the resources go to San Jose. So we knew we were looking at some challenges. How do we provide services that are in a language that the women understand? How do we provide services when they can access them? If they're working 2 and 3 jobs, when do they have free time, right? If they're moms, where do they then take their children, right? So within this community, often the children are either left home with an older sibling or a family member. But I know me as a mom, if I only have a few hours to give, I really don't want to leave my children at home. I'd rather them be with me close by. There's something about having all your little ducks and your little chickens close to you, right? There's just something special about that. But the reality is they often don't have somebody else to take care of them as well. So many different things going on with that. So language, transportation, childcare, lack of time, right? So looking at all these barriers, right? We had to address these barriers. So that really begins to narrow the pool. So we applied for ARPA funds, American Recovery Plan Act funds from the city of Mountain View. And so with that partnership for workforce development, we received some funding kind of kickstart this program with the Mountain View Los Altos Community Foundation. So we really joined together to tackle this issue around disrupting poverty and creating pathways toward economic mobility. But we had to create, we needed to show that it worked. We needed to show that there was willingness and that people were committed, right? And so we created a contract, right? And so our contract says basically that you will commit to 85% or more of the attendance requirements, right? That you will have honor and respect toward the leaders who are coming to, teach you, right? That you will have honor and respect for one another, right? So a lot of it had to do with basic leadership development skills are built into the contract, and then attendance and timeliness, right? So we've got limited amounts of time. We want to respect everybody's time. And this is a culture, that's Latin time, right? This is a culture that often shows up late. This is a culture often the women might bicker and gossip. And so we really had to create some structure around what was going to be acceptable in the group. And this is like just some basic leadership development stuff. A lot of it's that because we know if we can encourage them. It doesn't matter if they go to the bank, they're going to deal with what? People. They're in this room, they're going to deal with people. If they go to their child's school, they're going to deal with people. So a lot of it was people skills, right? And it doesn't matter. People skills go a long way in this world. You don't have to have the degree. If you've got a skill and you got people skills, kind of sky's the limit.
So they make a commitment to the program and the structure that's out there. How many participants do you have in this whole program?
Yeah, so we have 22 in our first cohort right now. And with that, we've gone around, we've seen all of the programs that are doing something similar, but nobody is doing this work targeted towards Spanish-speaking community members. And the way in which we're doing it. Yes, La Cocina is the dream, right? It's the organization that's been around a long time. But the barrier to entry is complex. Again, it's here at San Francisco. It takes You have to have already gone through a program like ours to even be eligible for a program like that. So we're like the step before the La Cocina application, really. In our program, we have pillars, right? So there are 5 pillars. So one is around literacy. What's included in that? You heard Cindy talk about English language development. So there's English literacy. What about technology literacy? Right? A lot of these women do not have a device in their home. How is that possible? I'm sure many of us in this room have multiple. And I don't mean just in the form of a phone, right? They do not have access to technology in their home. It's hard to believe, but it's true. So there's technology. There's also financial literacy. There's a big component that's around wealth generation and financial literacy, right? Because we don't want to just see them get out of poverty. We want to see their household get out of poverty for them to create generational wealth. There's entrepreneurship. There's community. Like, what does community look like? In our community pillar, it's really about spending time with each other and building up community. What happens when you have community? You're going to network. You're going to refer each other, right? You're going to be healthier, right? We have a loneliness pandemic in this country per the Surgeon General, right? So when you're in community, you're not only healthy physically, you're healthy mentally. They rep the organization out in public, and there's a way in which to do that. There's a way in which you show up. There's a way in which you dress, right? So they have a certain attire that they wear when they represent the organization that's very crisp and clean, right? They show up on time. They represent the organization well. There's in that community pillar, they get to pick what they want to do. We don't designate. We just say, hey, here are the options for the month. What do you want to do based on your availability? That might be going out to serve RV dwellers on the street, bringing them notifications and giving them tools so they can advocate for themselves, right? A lot of our work is around education, advocacy, understanding laws, understanding barriers. So we then therefore teach that, and then they can pass on the voice. You heard Cindy. It's about empowering others, right? They're being elevated to then multiply and empower others. We only keep what we have. If you're in recovery, you know this thing, you keep what you have by giving it away, right? So there's a value in sharing, what we've learned. In the pictures behind me there, you'll see women with their laptops or iPads. They had choices, and we wanted a grant from Destination Home, which is a nonprofit in Santa Clara County that really focuses on affordable housing and affordable housing solutions. So we know those high rent prices, right? That also technology tools as a form of homelessness prevention because it gives access. So a lot of our work is focused. Economic mobility work is really on, I heard it shared earlier, it's really on homelessness prevention. We're trying to keep people housed, right? And how do we keep them housed? By earning living wages, right? Giving them tools for their toolbox, creating generational wealth. We don't want to see more people become unhoused. And in Santa Clara County, for every one person housed, 1.7 enter into homelessness. Right? So even though we're moving the needle, we're not moving it fast enough. There's not the right pipeline of housing. And then you've got, one of the barriers I didn't get too much into has to do with, I think we're going to talk about it a little bit later too, is around an ITIN, right? A tax ID. If you are undocumented, one of the biggest barriers, these are people in our community that are contributing. They're buying stuff from stores, right? They are contributing most of their earnings locally, right, into the local economy, right? And they want to contribute into our tax system. And there is a platform and a way in which to be able to start a small business through use of an ITIN, right? Individual tax identification number, right? But that's under attack right now in our nation with everything happening.
So
Yeah.
all the changes in DC, a lot of that is being pulled into question. So I think we're going to jump into that a little bit later,
Yeah.
but it's slowing up a lot of your momentum, and it's
Yeah.
giving a lot of your participants some pause in terms of how much visibility, how much risk they can take in terms of taking steps forward.
Yeah.
So, but we're going to save that one for the very end because we want to end on some of the learning opportunities
Yeah.
out there.
And I
So,
want,
yeah, tell us about the trainings you have because you've got
thank
all
you.
kinds of milestones and
Yeah.
things you reward people for learning things. So, tell us about those programs.
Yeah. So again, a big part of our work is education. So we need to be out there in the community, going to places like that were mentioned earlier today, getting resources, finding out what's available out there. So one of those things I did, just, I don't know, 18 months or so ago, the county was offering what's called a MICO certification class. So MICO stands for Micro Enterprise Home Kitchen Operation class. The state of California allows individuals to sell food out of their home, and they can earn like $120,000 just selling food out of their home or apartment, right? That's awesome that they're offering this training. The county had stipends to pay for the application fee, because they weren't getting enough people interested in the program. So they had these stipends. So I go to find out about it. It's offered in San Jose, it's offered in English, and it's offered in the middle of the day, right? 3 barriers right there, right? Well, this is awesome. People I think would be interested in it, but hey, can we offer this in North County? Can we offer it in Spanish? And can we offer it in the evening? Well, how many county employees do you know that work in the evening? Right? They have contracts, they have rules, right? And so what we were able to do though is advocate and work directly with the leadership, say, hey, we really need this. We can help you get your program off the ground, but we need you to be able to offer it when people can access it. Do you understand what the barriers are? And so we did that, and we had a packed house. So we rented out the Redwood Room at the Mountain View Community Center. We had a packed house. The county came up. We offered childcare at that time, and we also offered a really cool program to spark entrepreneurship in children with a local author who has this book about children and entrepreneurship and starting your own business, whether that's a lemonade stand, whether that's mowing your lawn, whatever that might look like. So that children were getting parallel training at that time. So that was really cool. And we have another picture up there. You see Cindy in there with her red coat. She had just completed her small business development class courses with the SBA. And so we had just about 30 participants in that program. We opened it up to the household. If there were people in their household that wanted to participate, same thing. We worked with the SBA and SBDC to come to our area to offer at the night in Spanish. And then, so location, Spanish, and the time, right? So,
Okay. And childcare.
and yeah, so kids could come hang out. So sometimes we don't always have direct childcare access or staff to be able to watch the children, but we do make it available to them if they cannot find childcare and they need to bring a child. Their child is 100% welcome to participate.
Which I think is pretty cool. All right, so you've got some great stories because your program has expanded, and you have some incredible, fingers going out to the community in different ways that you never envisioned. So tell us a little bit about some of the stories we're visually seeing on the screen.
Yeah. So in these photos behind me, we had a pop-up initiative in the city of Mountain View. This opportunity came up. A lot of Europeans do what in July?
Walkabout.
Holiday, right? They
Yeah.
go on holiday, right? And so one of the local markets downtown on Castro Street, which is our thoroughfare there in Mountain View, they had this pop-up this creative collective utilizing the space there, and they were going on holiday and they needed to find somebody to utilize their space. So one of the things, one of our biggest barriers is, again, location and access. And so commercial kitchens are few and far between in our area. San Jose has commercial kitchens. Redwood City has commercial kitchens. And if you know that they're 2 different counties, that's a distance. And if you're trying to get food from one place to another, kids to school and pick them up and all those things, barriers. And so where can they use a commercial kitchen that's licensed so it's safe for the public, or they can advertise and sell food for the public, not just out of, an alley, or something. But like, so it's good. It's for the community. So they could also charge what the market will bear for good food, right? And so we had this opportunity come up. Creative Collective was going on vacation and they're like, hey, we need a renter. We're like, hey, this sounds like an opportunity for us. And so Reach was able to absorb the rental fees in this space so the women could come try out retail sales. And so that was extremely successful for the women that participated in that program from July until September. Actually got an extension. Our program actually did better than the other group that was there previously. And that was through networking. That was through support. That was through this fan base of people that really love culture and food and community, and everybody spreading the word and doing their part. But we had 5 operators in there. So we had Guatemalan food, 2 households that sold Salvatorian food, actually 6, excuse me, 2 that sold Mexican cuisine, and then Cindy who sold Venezuelan. So each had their different, the 2 Salvadorian women had different takes and styles. Same with the Mexican food, and we would actually, one of the women, Gloria, so she had birria tacos, and they call it a consomme, like where you dip the tacos in a plate. And she would frequently sell out. Like she would sell out midday. She didn't even have enough later in the day. But Cindy really was the backbone in a lot of this because she had the prior experience and she spent countless hours investing in the other women, helping them learn how to use a Square, helping them learn how to connect it to their bank accounts, helping them tap into the technology that was in the space, creating their posters, their menus. These are all things that were foreign. The opportunity just kind of was like, boom, here's a space. We're like, oh my gosh, we have to let's test this out. Let's see if this works. Let's see if people are excited about this. And they were super excited. Where does this story fizzle out? Because it does. And so where it fizzled out is that in the place that we're in now, we're a nonprofit. So nonprofits, we need to be good stewards of finances and resources. These are women who are launching a business, right? And they don't necessarily have the capital, right, to invest in themselves and the business. And we're talking downtown Mountain View, okay? So if you imagine the rental prices of an apartment are high, think about the commercial rental space. And so things were going well. However, the store, he had needs too. He has operational expenses. And so what we were going to be asked to pay was double what we started off paying, and it just was not feasible for the women. So we tried it out for a couple months. We just thought, this is not feasible for the organization. This is not feasible for the women. And we felt like we would be doing them more harm than good. We were setting them up basically to fail based on the exorbitant rent prices. And so we're like, okay. The beautiful thing is one of our faith partners that was there, we had this like a night, awareness night, if you will. And they said, hey, our church has a commercial kitchen and we don't really use that commercial kitchen. Would you guys like to use the kitchen? We're like, yes, that's awesome. We'd love to use the kitchen. So it's licensed, it's permitted. We have a wonderful agreement in which to be able to use that kitchen, help provide services to that house of faith, where the women could continue to grow, have experience using the commercial kitchen. They also have large facilities, so we rent space from them when we have our SBDA classes or we have small gatherings and groups. We're able to utilize their space and resources, which is good for today. Is it sustainable? No, right? So one of the things that eliminated for us was retail sales in a high trafficked area, right? And they also have a preschool at this church. So they don't really want a lot of people coming to this location to pick up food. There's little kiddos there. So we have to respect that. What we are able to do is use that space for training, for connecting, for classes, and catering, right? But so if any of you order, we had this wonderful food here today. So it's one thing when you know that you have an event planned and you can plan ahead. But a lot of times with businesses, I used to be an office manager and administrator. So with that, there might be, hey, your supervisor is going to have an event on Tuesday, right? It's Friday. It's going to have something on Tuesday, you need to order food. So that's part of the challenge. Even though we have access to this commercial kitchen, the church also uses it too, right? And so we don't have 100% access. We have limited access. Is it good for now? Yes. Is it sustainable? No.
So it's an interim solution until you can
Yes.
figure out something else that's going on. Excellent. So tell us a little bit about some of the people going through. You've got some. We've heard Cindy's story. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So who are some of the other folks, and what are the other areas where they're having success?
Yeah, that's awesome. So part of our program, so one of our core pillars has to do with food services naturally, right? So they go through and they get managerial food handling, which is a whole, I know you and I had talked about that. That's a whole barrier in and of itself, trying to use technology to take a managerial food handler's exam with a 100-page booklet that's in color. You're just learning technology. You've got, yeah, you can print that booklet. Anybody print color pages lately? Right? So that's really expensive, right? They don't know how to use technology. They don't have access to printers nor funds to pay for 100 pages of printed in color, right? And so, and then just trying to navigate all of that. So we were able to offer courses in person with a Spanish speaking, I'm going to blank on the word, not a moderator, but like not a translator. There's like a proctor, like basically, if you will, that examines in the room, like why they're taking the test, that they're actually the one doing the test. They've checked IDs, make sure that their name's on the certification. But yes, so they speak in Spanish. They help give the pre-work, like and then they proctor the exam. And so with that, that opens up doors that they can then have their own business and supervise individuals, which is really that's creates opportunities for them that they can then go into a restaurant and become a manager, right? So maybe they don't want to start their own business, but it already elevates their pay scale. It's one thing from being a busboy or a hostess to then being the manager, because then they have the ability to supervise, right? So that's one way. We also teach them very customized skills. Again, they have the option what they want to learn. So in some of these pictures, you're going to see baking and all just the different techniques with baking that go into that, and customized cupcakes, and the general sentiment was like, oh my gosh, that's why they could charge so much money, because it's a lot of work, right? But with that, some of the successes, Paul, are really around helping them understand what the market will bear. Like what they might sell to me personally as an individual, they might sell me a dozen tamales for $35. Anybody buy a tamale lately at a store? Anybody? What would you pay? Okay, that doesn't count. And they're good. They're good. And they're good to reheat at home or for things like that. But if you're going into a restaurant to buy a pupusa or tamale, compared to me buying it directly from somebody within the community, you're going to make a lot more money, right? So just teaching them that their product is worthy, their product is high quality, people will pay, right? And so sometimes that means looking outside of the community that they might normally sell to, right? That might be looking to many of you in this room to become their consumer, right? And to purchase from them, right? So teaching them to look outside of their community, and that's okay if they want to focus on selling to the community too, but just teaching them that there's other options. One of the women in the program, she works 3 jobs. She's a single parent with 3 kids. They're teens right now. But she was able to make between $2,000 and $3,000 a day. That's life changing, right? Another mom in the program who is married, has 4 children. One just went away to UC Riverside. She has a special needs child as well. Just her making tamales to sell to the public in a day. She's worked at Jack in a Box for over 20 years. They don't give her enough hours to where she can have benefits. What she's able to make just through tamale sales once a week is more than she makes in the entire month, right? So, I mean, it's life changing. It gives them back time. It creates value for the product that they're producing. And personally, I'm the worst cook ever. So I'm a consumer for sure of their products. And let me tell you, the food is so good. They've had opportunities to show up at neighborhood meetings, right? And spread the word, connect with the mayor, connect with leaders in the community. So we get requests for, can you come do catering? And so a lot of that we have to be careful in their while they're waiting on their licensing because it could prevent them actually from getting permission to sell food. So Cindy's been wonderful in that way. We work through avenues that are legal for us to be able to utilize kitchen space and things of that nature to be able to sell food. Yeah.
That's very cool. So we're going to go through some of the challenges because we said we'd come back to some of those difficult
Yeah.
things. So you're working with women, and you've mentioned the commercial kitchen space, that without that, you really can't, that storage and that meeting space, you really can't scale or sustain that as a business. And that is a challenge for you. Is that
Major challenge. So,
Yeah.
right, capacity building, right? It's really basically, it puts a halt in the pipeline. There's so much potential and momentum, but it's like, boom, like it really, it does halt the potential in the momentum, right? Because we do need a space that's close to where they're at, that's hyper local and accessible, right? So, and that's really, community building is just that. It's place-based connecting, right? And so community matters, right? Paul was sharing earlier that many of you are right here from San Francisco. It makes sense, right? You're building community here. And thank you for inviting those of us in the room that are not from San Francisco to come alongside and learn from you and partner with you and connect with you. Yeah, but place matters, right?
Yep. We're going to skip the second one for now. We're going to come back to it. But you also help people with their concepts of how do you run a business? How do you personally set yourself up to manage those finances, do the reporting so it's sustainable, but also how do you work the technology so you can do transactions? I mean, the things that we see that we take for granted, that's all stuff that you've got to, if you're going to scale and sustain yourself, you've got to be able to receive digital currencies, right?
Yes, 100%. And then even just basic business math. So on our staff, one of our interns, she just graduated with her mechanical engineering degree. So shout out to Kiara. Yeah. So she's just phenomenal. She really just has, everybody on our team has a heart to serve, a heart to give back and just to elevate the community. And she really spends time with them creating workshops for them around business math, technology classes. So we have an internal expert who's leading some of these classes and connecting them to resources, even on the financial literacy. So those are workshops that we bring in experts to lead and also connect them to Money Canva, which is the largest nonprofit in the world, where they can access financial literacy services that are by phone in Spanish, and they pick the time in which they need it. But yeah, all these things that they never even thought about. One of the coolest things, not coolest, but that was created value is that one of the women who participated in Money Canva had shared, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to keep my business and personal finances separate, and why that was so important, right? Like just practical things, just very, very, very basic things.
So they're getting this great foundation. They have
Yeah.
all this network support, and then they run into the changes in the political environment. There's some changes going on at the federal space where in the past they could be anonymous, start to contribute. They felt that they could earn their way up and start to be part of the community itself. But a lot of that is in question now. So talk a little bit about the challenges and the pain in that process.
Yeah, pain. This is a point of pain. And I say that it's a space that we're navigating in. It's a space that is unpredictable right now. And so all of the women in our program literally finished their small business development classes in December of 2024. Their whole assignment in January, right? Because it's, we're teaching independence, not dependence. Their whole assignment in January was to connect with their SBDC coach and get their paperwork going and filed. That was their homework for January. So here comes a change in the administration, and immigration has been on the forefront. And whether realized or not, this is you know, historically, we've taught about what's actually really happening in this immigration space. Let's not be fear based, let's be fact based. What's actually happening? And historically, yes, deportations have been happening and at a much higher scale than probably any of us knew on a daily basis. You know, under the Biden administration, there were roughly 740 deportations a day last year, right? So nobody was really talking about that. Was it happening? Yes. We look at ICE reports, like what's the reality of you really getting deported, right? What does that look like? Is someone really coming after you? Are they just coming after criminals, right, that have maybe committed violent acts or things like that? And so part of that, again, is educating, getting information, educating the community on what we find out, right? So any of you know what the number one cause of deportation is in the United States according to ICE reports? You guys are educated. We got some educated individuals in this room. That's right, traffic violations. So they're not necessarily.
We're talking auto trafficking.
That's right.
Okay,
Auto traffic. Oh, yeah, not trafficking. Yeah. Thank you for the clarity there. Very good. That's very important clarification.
Pointing that out.
Yeah. So besides, yeah. So that's been going on for several years, right? That's been the case, but nobody's really. A lot of people don't read the reports. They're not educated on what's happening. So we're just able to share that. We're able to share like, hey, here's the reality of what's happening within our particular community, the kinds of detentions that we have historically seen, which are few and far between, are for when they are looking for somebody and they come to a door, but that person doesn't live there anymore. Right. And so they're coming across someone who's undocumented. They were never the intended target. And then there may be a detention, at that point. That's historically what we've seen.
So we're going to struggle through that because there are going to continue to be challenges and changes in there. But
yeah,
you guys have learned a lot of stuff over the past couple years. You guys have done some amazing things. You want to share information about like what you've learned with the Mako County trainings because you guys have done some incredible things. Yeah. But you also have a wish list of things you wish you could make changes to your program to help it scale and sustain better. So tell us a little bit about the lessons learned and then a little bit about your wish list.
Yeah, I think in any community development work or nonprofit work, it's really important to know our community. The broader community in which we're planted as nonprofits, but also the very intentional community that we're serving day to day. And asking them questions, being a listening partner, like what are the things that they need? How do we remove barriers to access for you? And so through Miko, it's just that. It's like figuring out, doing our homework, being educated, asking questions. What do you need? Right? It's not really about.
So what is Miko? Because you said it's up there.
Yeah. So Miko stands for Micro Enterprise Home Kitchen Operation. Right. And so even though this is really awesome, if you're a renter, you're undocumented, and maybe you're actually living in a rental unit that somebody else's name is on the lease, do you want to go to your landlord, because you do need permission, go to your landlord and ask like, hey, can I sell food out of my house? No.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're still learning through all that stuff.
Yep.
The trainings need to be in English and Spanish.
Yes.
They need to be close to where they live so they can get access to it, right? And it needs to be off hours because they're typically working 2 and 3 jobs. And then you always need to include questions around childcare. Those are things that you guys have really taught the county. You're working with them. You've accommodated and helped to transform that organization. And other counties should look at that as well. It's something to be learned. So your own program, like what are the things you wish you could add to your program that would make it more successful?
And I think as we're in this, for those of us in the space of working with individuals with lived experience and trying to help them get out of poverty, whether that's guaranteed basic income, whether that's workforce development, stipends are really important, right? Because what we're saying is we're going to invest in you. We're going to give you some financial cushion to help remove some of that pressure, that toxic stress, so that you can be all that you were created to be, right? That you can pursue the potential that's on the inside of you, and we're going to give you an opportunity, right? And so, and again, it's like through that contract, it's saying you're committed. We're not just saying everybody gets a a handout, right? And that's not even the heart around, that's really a hand up. And that's not, our program is not a handout at all. We're saying you want to invest in yourself, we're going to come alongside you. And we want to make that burden easier so you can be successful. So stipends cash is really important, right? Just and things, and we know Mountain View just did a study with the University of Pennsylvania around GBI. They're one of the leaders in this. And just that little extra cash actually really helps with mental health and toxic stress, right? Just relieves a little pressure. That means, okay, I don't have to worry. If I get a flat tire, okay, no big deal. I got the funds.
Yeah. Opportunity for crypto down the road. That would be really a great place to reward individuals and help them financially find and achieve some level of success. Now, the commercial kitchen just isn't about the space and about the storage. It also allows you to expand on the businesses. So you could sell retail and catering, but you want to talk a little bit about commissioning. Like, what
Yeah.
is commissioning?
Yeah, so you need a commissioning kitchen, whether you're a food cart, whether you have a food truck or do pop-ups, you need to have a certified kitchen in which your food is basically that's inspected by the county that says it's food, this it's safe, right? And so you don't just get to have a pop-up and keep the food in your house or have a food truck. You actually need to have a commercial kitchen. So some of those things you need space to park that truck, right? That food truck, you need space to store your food cart. You need a commercial kitchen to commission, to pay fees to utilize. Restaurants can operate in that space too. So a restaurant can allow someone that has a food cart to commission, like to utilize their kitchen as well. So that's one creative way to utilize that.
Right. And we talked a little bit about meeting space to plan out meals and storage to put some of the food reserves so you can actually create the food that's needed on the fly. But talk a little bit about the funding and the support from the community. How could the community both fund and support your efforts? Just a little bit more.
Yeah. So I think, just advocating. I hope that, as I shared today, you learned some things around barriers and access. And as you're doing your work in your circles, I think this will help collectively. Like really reach out to your assembly members, reach out to local government about providing services when the community is available, right? Open one night a week, open one night a month, make services accessible for those that are vulnerable in the community. And I think that's a message, that's something we all need to advocate for because there's a huge need, right? Community doesn't necessarily have especially if they're day laborers or things of that nature, undocumented. They don't necessarily have vacation pay or PTO or things of that nature to be able to say, I'm not going to go to work today. They have a hard enough time going to a food bank that's in the middle of the day. So things like that. I think that's something we can all do is advocate for equal access to services at times when individuals can access them. That's one thing, cash, right? Like invest into others in your community, invest into those that are trying to get out of poverty, that want to elevate their circumstances and to be able to create generational wealth, for their families. That's not easy. This is like pioneering space, right? A lot of the households we serve, I didn't even talk about education. A lot of Latin American nations, you pay to go to high school. It's not free. We're blessed in this country to be able to access a free education. A lot of the community members I serve, they maybe have middle school education. And high school is really where they learn a trade. They pay. It's about $1,500 a year in Mexico, for example, to go to high school and learn a trade that you can then put right into to action, but it's not free. And then some countries too, like women are still unfortunately discriminated against. Some of the women that I'm in community with were beaten for going to school, beaten for trying to get an education. So there's women's rights are, we're still not paid the same, right? We just don't have the same access to opportunities. Just recognizing, I think another thing I'd love to share is that we don't know what we don't know. We cannot look at somebody in this room and think we know their story, right? We really do not know. So I think, asking questions, open-ended questions. How can I help? What do you need? I think those are things we could all take away? So I'm not exactly answering, but I
No,
think
no, that's
in my
really good.
answer, I think collectively we can move the needle. And so I need your help, right? And these are ways that we can do that.
Perfect. So we actually have a window where we want to ask some
Sure.
questions, right? There's some amazing insights you guys have. There's a lot of people here. A few people here have food industry
Oh, that's
expertise. I was
awesome.
looking, scanning the audience. So we're going to have
Yay.
Cindy come on up if you want to. We're going to get some questions we want to be able to ask, but we'd love to kind of bounce around and have you guys ask questions. This is an amazing organization. If we're going to solve homelessness, we need to find ways to work with all the people of focus, all the gathered groups, and allow them to be successful. And this is a brilliant opportunity. In the future, if you want to watch this over again, we're going to have it up on YouTube. So feel free to check out our channel up there as well. But we'd like to be able to open up the floor for questions like, learn more about what you're doing and
Sure.
maybe poke into some of the questions we alluded to.
Hi, what about expanding your business to incorporate Arabic speaking, Chinese speaking, and, other languages?
Yeah, I love that. We love diversity. Mountain View is known for its diversity. I love food from all over the world, and I think that's a great idea. This is our first cohort. We're not adverse to that. I think we're just not skilled in that at this moment. And I think our heart really is to expand this, to create, have the mompreneurs be its own nonprofit and spin off, so it can expand, so it can reach other
Like-
ethnicities. Yeah.
So if you had people that were willing to do that, to like speak other languages and help out, you would be willing to like take them on?
In the current cohort, there's not space for that. It's very specific. Our ARPA funds were very specifically geared towards Spanish-speaking immigrant women. So that is our current structure. We're learning, we're growing. We love the community. Again, we live in a diverse community. We're not, yeah,
And you
they'd
teach
be
people-
welcome. So I shouldn't say, we're getting ready to take intake in our second cohort.
Mhm.
So we're not, again, not adverse to any of that. I think that wasn't the intent of our first cohort or where our funding source came from, what we got approval for. Yeah.
Do you teach people how to get like do their taxes and get like citizenship?
That's not really a focus. We help them as far as filing for ITINs, how to get an ITIN, how to get a business ID, how to launch their business. Yes. Are we tax advisors? No.
Let me jump in here, but you do work with CityTeam,
Yes.
and CityTeam has folks. So you have the backup for the caseworkers and
Yes.
some of the others. So your organization is very holistic. It's very
Yes.
strong in those areas. So just this one group doesn't do everything, but you partner with the
Yeah.
other organizations and feed into those programs, right?
That's absolutely. And so Reach is a small nonprofit. We're just celebrated 17 years. Like our revenues are somewhere between 650,000 to 1.2 million. So not huge by any means. And but yeah, so I'm also part of CityTeam. So I'm the director of Lasting Solutions. And so I'm so glad that you asked. So I was thinking, how do I want to talk about CityTeam too? So CityTeam was founded in 1957, and CityTeam has an amazing track record at helping people get out of poverty, earn living wages, and go on to be successful. Contributing members of society, whether they were found in homelessness or addiction or domestic violence or just lost a job. And just amazing program. So I actually get to lead. I have the honor and the blessing to lead our workforce development initiatives out in the community. So this is an aspect of my work. The other is I get to work with a broader community, and case management is all about the direction that our work out in the neighborhood is about. It's like helping elevate people out of poverty, help them find community, reduce social isolation, reduce toxic stress, and help them move toward living wages. Yeah. So yeah.
I know. So getting out into the community, I know that CityTeam's got partnered up with some other folks. They're
Yeah.
planning and hoping to bring 100 women to the orchestra, right, with a night out in San Francisco. Many of those folks live right here in the city. So you guys are involved in a lot of really amazing things. That's pretty cool. So I knew that the mompreneur thing is what we were focused on. Just how do
Yeah.
we get use their skills and work with folks who want to be part of the community. How many people are in your Cynthia? How many folks are in your group today? Like, if you were to say the training program that you're going through, when you get together, how many people get together with you? How big is that group?
Yeah, I actually, I have 25 women in the group.
Nice.
So we, when I help everybody in the group. So, but it's one-on-one. So I have maybe my experience is más in the menu, in the cater menu, in the flyer, in the marketing, advertising. So I have a lot of experience, but I get the experience uh, in my house own, but the program gave me the more tools for get more experience for advertising my business.
That's awesome. Do we have one more question? Yes. Oh, question
Yeah.
here. You're up. Where?
Yes.
Amazing story, and I don't
Thank you. Yes.
I teach business, and every time we talk about barriers, I just add how the barriers that you're trying to close the next day and how these pass. So it was truly a wonderful example how you help women to be inspired and then also to aspire for greater things.
Thank you.
Well, we can speak English, basic things that we in the audience can do a long time. So as you can experience and talking them through. My question is, so you're working in Mountain View,
Mhm.
and I know regulation can be very cheap, how replicable is this to any other setting like San Francisco or another place where they might have a slew of different regulations?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you so much for your feedback and your encouragement too. And regarding your question, so our program is replicable, and it's partner. You know, Paul was sharing earlier about the work with CityTeam too. So it's really a complementary work with the detailed case management, but the program itself is completely replicable. And it's just, you know, where we look at the one pillar, which has to do with food services very specifically. Those will be county specific, but everything else is 100% replicable. It does involve identifying partners though, right? Partners then that would help do the financial literacy aspect, then that would help do the English language application. So what we found, I think this is really fascinating too. The women weren't at a place to do ESL. So ESL in our community requires a 4-day-a-week commitment in the evening. So it wasn't even attainable for them. So we utilize a nonprofit called Ingles Juntos, so English Together. And it was started by a Stanford professor. I've never seen anything like it. Her name's Guadalupe Valdez, and she partners up one of the women or men in the community with a coach. And that coach doesn't have to speak English, right? But what she does is then give them training and tools for the women to be able to immediately put into practice what they've learned. It's called practicas. And so she has a whole curriculum. I strongly encourage if anybody wants to help somebody along in their English journey. And on the English website, it's called English Together. You'll see she's, you know, Stanford emeritus professor. She worked at the Department of Education. I mean, she's highly qualified. We just happen to find the best of the best programs. But so it is looking, it's completely replicable. It's just looking at what are the resources in a community and plugging them into the right pillar. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. One question. Okay, last question because we're running kind of a little bit long here, so I apologize. Go ahead. Last question.
Really quick question, actually. Any online presence? Because I remember I used to run a food delivery company in Berkeley, and I believe Miko allows you to order online, and they can pick it up from the house, but you can't serve at the house, right?
Well,
Yeah.
go ahead.
And the second part was there was a service in Berkeley that also used to run called, which used to use the kitchens of restaurants after they're closed, called Hungry Hippo. Is this something you guys have looked at? Because once the restaurants close, they're willing to like do like a tiny amount of profit share to allow you to use their commercial kitchens and freezers and the refrigerators.
I love item number 2, which is, it's something we've thought about. It's not something we put a lot of boots to the ground But I thank you for sharing that there's a platform that exists for that, in a space that we can dig further into. And I think it works, especially with somebody like Cindy or Angelica or Azucena, like plugging very specific women into a restaurant. For the whole program, no, but for individual moms and helping them get launched, yeah, absolutely. I can see that that would work. 100%. And then on your regarding your other question, so for Miko, really cool thing, you could actually, if somebody you can serve at your house. They could actually come sit in your kitchen. They can come sit in your patio. But Mountain View, the majority of households are renting households. And so it does require some permissions from your landlord. The other thing with Miko, if you order by plate, you could actually, a new thing, you could actually have a heated, like a Cambro or a heated transporter to take and drop off. So it's not technically catering because they're ordering by the plate. They can't prepare trays like we call them chirolas, right? They can't create large trays to drop off for catering. But if somebody ordered 10 individual plates, they could transport it in a heat-safe container to a location and drop off. So that is some new
That's
options.
very cool. Yeah, I want to say that in Santa Cruz, they do have a serve out the back restaurant, a secret menu of restaurants, people starting out there. So a lot of my friends, they only order out the backs of restaurants for people who are just getting started out there. So it'd be a great little idea for you guys to explore. I want to thank you for coming down here and spending and sharing your ideas.